this is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and here's a smackdown. Well, we've done it before, and I'm sure we'll do it again in the future as the generations keep going up. We have the second generation 12.9-inch iPad Pro here, and the latest generation Microsoft Surface Pro, the 2017 model with Intel Kaby Lake CPUs inside. So how do you choose between these two big tablets? We're going to find out now. Okie dokie, these have a lot in common. They're 12-point-something inches, 12.9 for the iPad, so you do get a bigger screen, which is nice, versus 12.3 for the Surface. They both have pretty close to the same resolution and the same pixel density. They start at $799, and neither of them comes with their $160 keyboard or their $99 pen, so those are extra spends. Of course, with the Surface Pro, you can get really, really expensive if you want to get one of the decked-out Core i7 models with lots of RAM and lots of storage inside. That one can approach $2,000 easily. So Surface Pro, for a change, gets to be actually, in general, the bigger spend on here. Now, it's all obvious at this point, I think, for most of you. You know, iOS is a mobile operating system versus a desktop system. If you know you need desktop programs, there's specific programs that you need that are only available as desktop programs, it's going to be the Surface Pro. That said, iOS has come a long way, especially with iOS 11, which we'll show you when it's a little less buggy and works a bit better. You're going to have advanced multitasking and application launcher, a file manager. So they're going to get a little bit closer, but I suspect that Windows is always going to be the most extensible operating system right there. So there you have it. If you love the benefit of a mobile operating system, instant on, generally speaking, no viruses, very low maintenance, it's still going to be the iPad. If you need the power of a desktop, it's going to be your Surface Pro 4. So what are the differences? Well, the keyboard, the Surface Pro keyboard is just better to type on. I'm sorry. The iPad keyboard that Apple makes works, but it feels just plain old weird. You get a trackpad. iOS doesn't support trackpads. You got your finger, you got your pen, they figure that's enough right there. Some people really feel like they're not having a serious computer experience without a trackpad. You've got a lot of similarities here, and they've gotten closer actually since the last time we did Smackdown, because the programs have improved a lot on iOS. At first there wasn't much that could really stand in for your desktop workflow. Office 365 is available on the iPad. It gets better and better. You don't get all the bells and whistles, but it's what most people need unless you do really advanced things like table of content, 10th generation in Word or something like that. We have Affinity Photo, which is really, it's not that stable yet, but it's getting there in terms of Photoshop sort of replacement there with filters and layers and all of that nice stuff. I used to say, if you're a serious photographer, there's just no way, much as the iPad Pro is a beautiful display on it, there's just no way you can replace Photoshop on it. But if Affinity Photo keeps going in the right direction, then it could happen. And eventually, maybe Photoshop will do something more. Their versions of their mobile applications are not nearly like their desktop counterparts. That said, Surface Pro is also improving too, because one of the things that was wrong was it had a lot shorter battery life than the iPad. Well, the 2017 model has much improved battery life. It's not going to hit that 14-hour claim runtime that Microsoft says. It's just, I don't know how they can possibly claim that, but it does do 7 to 8 hours now, which is pretty reasonable. The iPad still does 10. There's that. But still, that's not such a huge gap as when Surface Pro 4 only managed 6 hours versus 10 hours on the iPad. When it comes to the pen, the improvements are really very good here. Like I've told you in some other videos, I kind of stopped using the pen on the Surface Pro 4. The palm rejection was starting to lag behind other devices. The initial force of activation meant you really had to press hard to make a mark. And I use this for artwork where light sketching is kind of necessary. And with the new pen, it's certainly improved a lot, to the point where I've done some very nice paintings on this, and I've enjoyed painting on it a lot. That said, the iPad for me, for art, for drawing and painting, not for photography editing so much, the iPad Pro still wins. Number one, because you got an idea, you want to sit down and sketch it, it's instant on, it's ready, there's no Windows update, there's no Adobe license you have to reauthorize kind of thing going on. The initial force of activation is still a little better on the iPad. I think it's close enough at this point, and I have a pretty light hand, though, that that's not a deal breaker for me. The pen latency is still better on the iPad, in part because of that new True Motion display, the 120 hertz refresh. But you can see in the video that we're going to show you here, slow motion, I was going about the same speed doing both of these, which is to say pretty quick. And the iPad Pro is still quicker than the new Surface Pro with the new Surface Pro pen, and that is something that you can kind of feel, the immediacy of the lines you're drawing. But still, the Surface Pro is not bad anymore, and it is pretty pleasant, and it depends on whether you're more of the charcoal sketching kind of person or you're doing inking. Another way that the Surface Pro and the iPad have come closer together is that initial force of activation. So here you see I'm just barely resting the pen on the glass, and most of the lines, well, they're coming out. It might be a little faint for you to see, but they're there. And you can see the jitter isn't too bad either. We will have tilt with this pen. However, right now only Microsoft's own sketching app has it, so no tilt. Whereas with the iPad, you got it now, and you got it supported in all applications. So that still sets it ahead. So even the iPad can miss a stroke if I'm being incredibly light. And you can see that the diagonal line is just about as good on it. Now, one thing, like I said, we got tilt. We got it all day long. We have it available to us. So that's something we're still waiting for Microsoft and the application developers to get going together so that we can have that in all sorts of applications. Now, for note-taking, you know, most note-taking people are not nearly as demanding as artists. They are both fine products for note-taking, and I could go either way with that. As to which of these I would take on a business trip in a heartbeat, it would be the Surface Pro, because I need a full computer. I do need desktop programs. I need Dreamweaver. I need some of those other things. But when I'm at home on the couch or just going to a 1-hour meeting in-house, then the iPad Pro does the job just fine in terms of meeting my needs, not just for note-taking, but for the kind of computing things I do. When it comes to the speakers, they're actually both really quite good on them, and a slight pro for the iPad Pro because it has that quad speaker system. There's more spatial separation, but they're both pretty loud and pretty full and sound better than most tablet speakers on the market. In terms of stability in your lap, neither of these is going to be great winners, honestly, whether you're using the Apple Smart Keyboard cover or you're using the Surface Pro with its kickstand and the companion keyboard. They're both a little floppy bouncy. You know, if I was on a bus, I always keep one hand on them to keep them from falling over if you have them on your lap. If they're on a table, they're absolutely fine. It used to be that the Surface Pro was the hotter, louder tablet, well, because, you know, it had a fan, it had full Core i processors inside. That's even changed too now because the Core M and the Core i5 are fanless. It gets toasty on the back, which an iPad almost never will, but it doesn't get burning hot. The Core i7 still does have a fan, but it's not really very loud. So for those of you who crave silence, even that's become, well, something that's just about on par now. Honestly, I probably wouldn't even own an iPad Pro, not that it isn't a beautiful piece of hardware, but because I don't have a lot of use for it, but I do own one because I love to do art, and it's still the best drawing experience that's available in this price range right now for a tablet. There you have it. Here's one that some of you are going to giggle about because we all seem to like to make fun of people who use their tablets as cameras. I don't. Do whatever floats your boat, I say, but you got better cameras on the iPad Pro. It has the same camera as the iPhone 7. But, you know, the Surface Pro camera isn't bad either. It depends on what you're using it for, too. Most people are probably just going to use it to take a picture of a landscape they want to sketch later, or you're using it for vertical market work like insurance, documenting damage to cars or something like that. I don't know. But if you're taking to a concert and you want the best possible pictures, it would be the iPad Pro. So there you have it, the latest generation iPad Pro 12.9 versus the 2017 Microsoft Surface Pro. And it's funny how they're coming together in a way. A lot of the complaints we had about the Surface Pro, the pen particularly, well, they've improved on it. It's getting more iPad-like. It's still not quite there yet. And with the iPad, it wasn't desktop-y enough in terms of multitasking, in terms of programs that are available. But since the first iPad Pro came out in 2015, there are a lot more very good programs out there that really are starting to close the gap, though not completely, with their desktop counterparts. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.